Bun găsit tuturor! Sunt Alina Dima, gazda dumneavoastră. Vă propun ca astăzi să descoperim una dintre cele mai fascinante țări de pe glob. Este o țară care a suscitat imaginația a milioane de oameni de-a lungul istoriei. Un teritoriu care este de altfel menționat în repetate rânduri, chiar și în textele biblice ale Vechiului Testament. Astăzi vom vorbi despre piramide, despre Nil, despre tot soiul de legende extrem de interesante în Egipt, căci aceasta este destinația despre care aș vrea să vă vorbesc. Evident, așa cum v-am obișnuit deja, gazda noastră astăzi va fi excelența sa, domnul Salah Eldin Abdelsadeh Ahmed, ambasadorul Republicii Arabe a Egiptului în România. Hello, Your Excellency. Thank you so much for having us here today at the embassy, and it's truly a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak about the fascination of your country.
Welcome, Elena, to the Egyptian embassy. We are so glad to have you.
Egypt is not only a fairy tale country, it has suscitated the imagination of innumerous writers, scientists, poets, love stories, movies, everything. But I would like to begin with what I believe might be actually a challenging question, considering the richness of your country's history. It is so full of events. If it were to think that this history started millennia ago, I know it's a hard task, but anyway, I would like to begin with an overview regarding the major events in the history of Egypt.
Yes, you are true. Egypt, through 7,000 years of history, it has it all. It has different sorts of touristic products that could provide to everyone and to every taste. Yes, it has been a kind of an inspiration through the different ages for arts, for music, for writings. We have history represented by Pharaonic, Roman Hellenic, Christian, Islamic, Arabian, all this kind of civilization. Egypt, African, because Egypt, many people, they don't notice that Egypt is part of Africa. However, 1/3 of each country, which is Sinai, it is in Asia. So it is the official bridge between the two ancient continents of Africa and Asia. So we have all these civilizations together. What's known in general, that Egypt have these three famous pyramids. Let me tell you that Egypt have 101 pyramids, different pyramids, with different sizes in different locations. If you keep going with the history, there is one city in Egypt that have 1/3 of the historic monuments of the whole world. It's called Luxor. In this Luxor, it has pharaonic temples, it has lots of monuments. However, monuments in Egypt are distributed all over the country, in every place you go. You go to Sinai, you will find everything. You go to south of Egypt, what we call Upper Egypt, because Egypt is sliding from south to north. That's how the Nile River runs. It's the only river in the world that runs from south to north. If you go to the south, there is, in Nubia, there is the African culture and the African existence of Egypt. And it is a very deep-rooted culture too, that goes up to the pharaohs itself. At a certain time, one of the rulers of Nubia ruled the whole Egypt. So there is a big diversity. If you go to Sinai, there is monuments, religious monuments for Judaism, for Christianity. Don't forget that Jesus Christ, when he came with Virgin Mary, they have safe haven in Egypt for almost 4 years. And they passed through Sinai, passed through most of Egypt until they reached the Upper Egypt or south of Egypt. So there is old Christian monuments and monasteries and so on. Islamic, which came as the last religion It has also its monuments there, and it has its leadership that went to, if we say, two wings of the Arab world. One wing would be going to the east, where the Gulf, Iraq, Syria, and one wing will go to the west, where there is Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. And the heart and the body will be in Egypt.
I would like to talk about Cairo now. Cairo, the capital of Egypt, is a city like a country.
Yeah.
Because of its very, very large spread and, of course, huge population. As far as I remember, there are more than 20 million people living in the city. What can the capital of Egypt offer to tourists that are interested in the city life?
Egypt, if you see, it looks like a square of 1 million square kilometer that is cut in the middle by the River Nile. So the civilizations that took place through the 7,000 years were on the banks of the Nile, where the water is. Because if you go east, you go west, you go to deep desert, no water, that means no life. Water is life. So it concentrated, and it came up to the north, where the River Nile pours or ends to the Mediterranean, where there is this V shape, it's called the delta. The head of the triangle of the delta is Cairo. Cairo, yes, is population, it's about 20 million, which is like the whole population of Romania.
Exactly.
The major museums are in Cairo. We're about to inaugurate and open what we call the GEM. The GEM is the Grand Egyptian Museum. It's a new museum, state of the art, will have lots of the very famous and attractions, collections like King Tut, Amun, it will be, his collection will move there, like statues of Ramses II, and so many, in a very modern way of display that has been in cooperation with many countries that participated in building and in arranging such a museum. This does not mean that the old museum or the known museum of Maspero or of the Khan Museum will close, but we have abundance of monuments. There is the shopping life with the bazaars and the markets and so on, whether the old and the artifacts, the traditional artifacts, or the new modern merchandise in the shopping malls, the state-of-the-art shopping mall. There is the culture life through the opera house, the theaters, the movie theaters. Egypt, to a certain extent, was capital of culture for the Middle East, for the Arab world, for Africa. So people would come, you would find in the summer lots of our brothers and sisters from the Arab countries, from the Gulf countries, would come to enjoy summer in Egypt and to enjoy the cultural life through the concerts, musical festivals. So there is a lot in Cairo, whether to buy, whether to see, whether to visit. And there is the Nile itself, which passes through all Egypt. It's fascinating to be by the River Nile by night in Cairo.
What would be the contribution of the tourism sector and, of course, everything that it implies to the country's GDP?
Well, there is direct contribution, of course, which is the bookings, the hotels, the direct, the museums, the direct. But there is indirect contribution. We have a huge sector of our population. Population of Egypt is 100 plus million people. Let's say 104, 100, around that. So a big sector of them is working in the field of tourism. The income, of course, my statistics goes back before the pandemic that we are seeing of COVID. It was contributing by about, the income, direct income was about $13 billion in 2019. It constitutes from 11 to 13% of the GDP, while aiming to be 15%. It depends upon the season. It depends when, and it depends on the volume of expenditure of the tourism.
You've mentioned earlier the Nile. It is truly one of the most fascinating rivers in the whole world. And it probably constituted as a muse or a source of inspiration for so many creative people, starting with writers and movie makers. But now I would like to talk about something specific, meaningly the legends of the Nile. And I am sure that there are quite a few of them, but let's focus on the ones that you consider as representative.
Well, if there is no Nile, there is no Egypt. Egypt is the gift of the Nile, as Herodotus have described Egypt once. So Egypt live on the water Nile. We don't have rain, not much rain. So that's why a famous saying that's said by all Egyptians, that what runs in our veins is not blood, it's the water of the Nile. Yes, so when you have a long, deep history, like the Egyptian history, and with the constant in all these cultures and civilizations was the presence of the Nile, for sure, it would have some kind of myth and stories that accompany that from the old history until nowadays. What comes to my mind, what is written in many of the heritage and the history books about the pride of the Nile that used to be celebrated in the first time, they say, and in some of the writings, they say that they used to choose a most beautiful young girl, and she would come happily and with pride and proud to be sacrificed in the Nile, so that the Nile would raise its waters in the season. So it means a lot of dividends and a lot of good deeds to Egypt when the water rises and increases. Of the thing, one of the most fascinating trips that many tourists love, to the extent that some of them would make it like yearly or year after year, is to take a cruise on the Nile between Luxor and Aswan, or from Cairo to Luxor. The Nile is really accompanied by a lot of myth. And I wouldn't just direct it to one myth, because I would leave it to inspire and to the imaginations of each humanity according to his background, to look at the Nile the way he would like to see it and the way he would like to feel it. And this is part of its beauty.
Well, for the Christians, for instance, or for the Judeo-Christians, there are so many
Moses,
biblical stories. Of course, the story of Moses
of
was
course. You see, you are reminding me, Elena, now the Nile, that Moses was his mother was asked to put him in a basket and throw him in the Nile. Who would do that with the child? But it's the faith inside. And he was saved. And actually he grew up in the palace of the Pharaoh.
Let's move on to the next topic that I am quite sure it's as interesting as the ones that we've been speaking about earlier. I would like to ask you about the most important historical and or cultural personalities throughout the history of Egypt. Some people that have made remarkable things throughout their lives and that the public doesn't really know that much about.
When people speak about pharaonic history, and they speak about Ramses II, one of the great Egyptian kings, or Hatshepsut, the lady that ruled Egypt and ruled until Africa, until Somalia. She has trade missions that went until Puntland in Somalia. If you know that history have at least 14 Ramseses. when you know that the most famous known king is King Tut. He died when he was 19 years old, so he was not the greatest kings, among the greater kings. His importance comes from that his collection, when he was discovered by Howard in 1922, it was intact. We have writers. If we're speaking about in recent history, we have Naguib Mahfouz, who is a literature laureate of Nobel literature laureate, that he won this respectable prize, international prize for his writings. That, by the way, all of his writings was local writings. He was describing the Egyptian situation and the Egyptian atmosphere. However, his description crossed borders and crossed countries and crossed seas, and was appreciated all over the world. We have the legend ruler Sadat, who initiated peace, the first try of peace between an Arab country and Israel.
I know that there are probably plenty of foodies among our viewers, so now I would like to change the topic a little bit and talk about the food scenery in Egypt. So my next question and next curiosity would be regarding the traditional gastronomy. What would be the most representative dishes?
Again, the diversity that Egypt have passed through its history, its long history of 7,000 years, have caused a lot of diversity in our dishes. Would you believe me, Elena, that I tell you that some of our very traditional food goes back to the pharaohs? Some of them goes to the Roman Hellenic, to Judaism, to Christianity, to Islam, to Arabs, to nowadays modern things. So we have a mix, a nice mix, a melting pot of all the cuisines in the world represented in Egypt. At a certain part of our age, Egypt was part of the Ottoman Empire, so is Romania. So this affected our food. When we speak about sarmale, many of the foods that we have, it is the same in both countries, in Romania and Egypt. I don't know exactly where it was affected from, but definitely it was affected by the passengers who were passing on our lands and left traces, whether as a kind of culture or as a kind of food culture. So I can't point at one field of food. It has a very big diversity in Egypt. The Hellenic period also left its fingerprint there, which I would call it the Mediterranean kind of food, which you could find it shared in France, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, and in Egypt to a large extent.
Well, let's say that food usually goes very well with family celebrations, with socializing, with people coming together to celebrate life and beauty, and also love. Why not?
Yes.
So it's about love that I would like to talk about now.
Yeah.
Meaningly, how do people celebrate engagements and weddings in Egypt? Are there any specific rituals that are different in Egypt than in any other place in the world?
This kind of habits or customs differs not between Egypt and other countries, within Egypt itself. It depends where you come from. So if you come from Alexandria, it will differ than if you come from Nubia, it will differ than if you come from a Bedouin tribe in the desert, east and west, or something like that. So it differs where your origin from Egypt coming from. There is some common feature. In the weddings and so on, it is preceded by certain procedure of celebration. Again, depends on where you are. There is what we call, before wedding, the henna night. The henna is just drawing with a plant color substance, some kind of decoration on the hand of the bride, and it keeps for some time. Of course, it's washable, but it takes some time. This is a celebration that usually women would have this celebration and would have it with music and would give this specialist artist that would draw on the hand of the bride in this henna night. There is the gatherings for that, and some of the weddings or the procedure of the weddings would continue for 7 days in the villages with stretched tables of food for people to come to celebrate the joy of the two families combining together through marriage.
My next question is actually a bit more complex.
Okay.
Actually, I wouldn't call it that complex, but anyway, it has to do with the Egyptians as a people. Are they superstitious, first of all? And how would you describe Egyptians as a people, as a nation?
Okay, let's go for the first part. Like any nation in the world, there are things of good omen and things of bad omen. It depends on the history, it depends on the culture, it depends on the thing. We are not very much superstitious, especially in our world, now a life which is this advanced life, this technological life. It doesn't give, it is more scientific than going into legends and superstition. But yes, there is some people that if it is 13th of the month and it is Friday, they would say few prayers or something like that. If they see black cat, I don't know what's the history of it, because cat was very much blessed in the pharaonic history. They used to have it mummified. It was a secret, yeah. But if they see black cat, they would say something like that. They would be afraid of the blue eye and the envy and things like that. And you would find if somebody, his beautiful daughter would have a very high, advanced position or advanced, he would say some kind of rituals and some kind of prayers and some kind of recitation of Quran or something like that. So we believe that there is envy, there is blue eye, there is whatever. We believe in such a thing, but it's not very widely. The advanced the society is, the change of habits are. Speaking about the Egyptian people are very warm, very hospitable to others. And I think, by the way, Romanians are like the same. You are warm in nature people. You welcome the foreigner. Sometimes friction among the people within the same country here, but with the foreigner, and I feel that as a foreigner, I was welcomed from the first minute I stepped a foot in Romania. It is the same in Egypt. We are a country that have been exposed to the civilizations. So we are very elastic regarding accepting. Yes, Egyptians are stubborn. Same way the river Nile runs across south to north against all odds and against all rivers of the whole world. We are stubborn in the right. We don't invade, but we defend ourselves and defend our land and defend our culture and our values. Also, we don't have a fixed feature. So yes, for us, we could see somebody who say Egyptian, but if you go to Egypt, always there is somebody that looks like you walking beside you in the street. And he's Egyptian and you are Romanian. Wherever you come from, wherever your faith is, always there's somebody like you walking in the streets of Egypt. So this does not make you feel stranger. It makes you feel home. It makes you feel you are among friends and family and people you connect to, even you are strangers from each other.
You have said something very true and very wise that should be emphasized as often as possible, so we can all remember that we are all one and we are all connected.
Yeah.
I would like to come back to Romania now.
Okay.
And ask you, what do you like most about our country?
One thing, I like a lot of things. I like the feeling that I got, and I am a professional diplomat, which means a professional traveler. I like the warm feeling that I got when I first arrived here, and I felt I'm among friends, I'm at home. This is a very nice feeling. I like the history, which is a diverse history to extent like mine. I like that Romania also was exposed to different cultures. I like modern Romania, though I hope the youth would prefer to stay in this another country and build it. I know there is a lot of temptation of traveling here and there, searching for better opportunity and better future. But they are gold mine for this country. If they and the country could attract them to put their effort in this country, definitely we'll see different Romania. Much, much better. I like the nature of Romania, which is diversity. From the mountains, to the valleys, to the beaches, to the river Danube that reminds me always with the Nile. It has a lot of things. For me as Egyptian, yes, I would humbly and proudly say I fall in love with Romania.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for having accepted this interview and for the comprehensive discussion that we had about your country. Egypt is definitely a book-like country. It's a novel-like country, so to say.
I'm so happy to have you, Elena, today. Always, always, Egypt will open its arms and its hearts before its arms to Romanians to come to it, enjoy their time in the time they want.
Shukran.
Thank you. Mulțumesc.
Dragii mei, vă mulțumesc încă o dată că ne-ați urmărit și astăzi. Iată, plimbarea noastră virtuală de această dată prin Egipt, cu siguranță vă ajută să setați o nouă destinație pe lista dumneavoastră de vacanță, în speranța că vremurile vor deveni mult mai bune decât cele de acum. Până la următoarea noastră întâlnire, însă, nu uitați să vă transformați viața într-o poveste frumoasă.